Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome back to another video. I don't usually make what I would consider to be political or political adjacent videos. I don't necessarily think this is the right place for it. It's a gaming channel where I do like my nerdy stuff, if you like. Not nerdy stuff I enjoy. Whereas I guess this is not a video I enjoy to make, but I guess feel somewhat impassioned about it, I suppose. Or maybe upset might be the right word to use. So you probably will see by the title, I want to talk about the UK rioting protesters. I don't know what I'll call the video, but yeah, basically it's such a I don't know what the right word to use is. I guess like abhorrent is the word I would use if I had to pick one. Like behavior from people who will show themselves or consider themselves at least to be patriotic or having a sense of national pride or community pride or all of the above, right? Or at least that's what they may want you to believe, I suppose, or the chance may have you believe. And as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure not many people will disagree with me. My cat is here. She doesn't disagree. I don't think. I don't know. Doesn't have an opinion. Okay. That you can't love your country if you laugh and revel when it burns. And I think setting fire to wheelie bins, buildings, whatever it is, smashing infrastructure, all that kind of really nasty behavior, violence. You can't say on one hand the two don't mix. You can't say you love your country and then also watch it burn and laugh while you watch it burn. It's just not possible. It doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. It's totally at odds, and it doesn't really. I would say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the situation is, in terms of having that sort of very jovial appreciation for doing that kind of damage in the streets. Now, I think we can look at some very historical examples if you want, for times where I could say, oh, you know what, maybe in that particular circumstance, there might be some justification. I'm thinking like Brittany during the World War. A lot of guerrilla warfare, that kind of thing. I think when you're being occupied by a foreign invasion who want to enslave populations, that kind of thing, then wow, I've just hit all of the YouTube red flags there, haven't I? But yeah, I should have maybe been a bit more broad. But yeah, you look at Brittany during the Nazi invasion, of France, like that to me, and maybe because I'm a bit tied to there through my life experiences, that that is probably one of the few justifiable excuses for doing targeted arson. It's not great, and it should be only like military, and they generally were only military occupied buildings like fire stations, that kind of thing, that were being used. But we're not dealing with that at all. What we're potentially dealing with is call out for what it is, right? Racist marches with completely the wrong, the wrong narrative and the wrong axe to grind, I suppose, may well be the way to put it. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there will be a lot of copycat riots and that kind of thing. We saw that during the BLM protests during lockdown, which I felt very similarly strong about, because I very much hate to see wanton destruction. I think it's wasteful. Obviously, it's criminal. It is also immoral, destroying people's livelihoods. you could say, well, maybe I have less sympathy for the big multinational companies, but ultimately, if they are doing legitimate business, one presumes, then they should suffer the same, or they should suffer the same protections, effectively, as everybody else. And yeah, to target places of worship and accommodation and that kind of thing is, I can't understand how that is allowed to happen at all. I mean, like, allowed to, in the sense of, it seems strong, and it is very strong, but if you have to deploy military forces to back up the police in order to ensure the safety of people in their own homes and in places of worship, then you absolutely should do that. And we should have done that previously. I think, as much as, like, if we want to talk about the BLM riots, because they're like the closest ones that were similar, and we can see how they took place, they were just allowed to do almost whatever they wanted. And it's a similar sort of thing now. There's obviously strong rhetoric, but ultimately, it will be allowed to fizzle down, which it will do eventually, of course, as with the BLM riots. But they're so far away, both so far away in what the triggering events were from both. Last one being a death in a foreign country of a non-British national, which is one of the things that I often struggle with. Mostly people being, it's so difficult to even have a focus down to the UK level, let alone having to worry about everything in the world. And understanding that even in Western cultures, they're very different. And then we have this one, which was obviously a horrendous incident in Southport. I won't go into detail because I don't want to hit every single red flag on YouTube. And then, for some reason, deciding that it should be a anti-immigrant, I guess, like the way the media are putting it, Muslim, but ultimately, basically non-white, non-native speaking, I think is probably the way I would put it. Targeted approach, asylum seekers, and illegal immigrants, that kind of thing. Whereas it's so disjointed from, even more disjointed than the BLM riots, from the actual impact. From the actual event. So, yeah, and the problem with the riots previously and this one now is it lessens the ability for legitimate marches to take place. Government and police forces will get, and you'd say it's a natural reaction, I suppose, very scared of any sort of large gatherings of people that wish to protest a point of order, I suppose, and want to do so, in a democratic manner of forming together and doing I often find marches a bit distasteful, I guess, as well. But or whatever, holding a external meeting, I suppose, maybe a better way of putting it. But actually showing a visible sign of we are against or for whatever particular thing has happened or policy that's in place. And maybe one of the points is, with everything, with all of this, that there is no obvious next step from doing that, and even just take the thing about or take people protesting every day outside Parliament for wanting to rejoin the EU during the whole of the time that the Brexit stuff was going on, or before the Brexit deal was finalised with Europe. Protest every single day out there, peacefully with placards and that kind of thing. Protesting the vote to leave. So where is the next steps? And I guess, the point is that there is no obvious next step when you want to make a point. So some would say, well, then maybe that falls into at elections, the time where we get to be the most democratic, or the time where you're allowed to send a representative into Parliament who will argue these things for you. So, I would say that there's been a lot of, or that works sometimes, shall we say. So sometimes the point can be made and representation can be had in Parliament. So things like the Greens, for example, there's a lot of people are very much on board with the Green agenda. They've now got 4 MPs, which is double, I think. Is it double what they had before? Did they only have 1? In any case, like a huge increase, right? A much greater visibility of those particular policies, whether I agree or disagree with them. The same thing for like sending independents, right? Because you have a very good local MP, or you agree, and you may hopefully agree with their national view on things. The problem is, and I don't know if it is just the really sort of I don't want to use the word toxic because I don't really like using that word, but the very sort of not nationalist but hyper-nationalist view, whether that was because of a seeming lack of representation through official means. So, for example, you wouldn't necessarily say that they align with Labour's policies. I think that's probably not too much of a stretch to make that point. And and then you see in terms of representative wise, you get like 34% of the vote and then a 200-seat majority. It's virtually unheard of. It's very unrepresentative. There's some graphs and stuff I've seen. I think it was on Sky News. It might have been, or it was talking about how representative the parliaments had been throughout the years. And I think generally it runs. I can't remember what the metric was, but this one was like it was like a 1.8 for this thing. So it's like 1.8 seats per something votes. Usually it's around 1.2, 1.3. So like historically a very unrepresentative election, and therefore you don't get the coverage of your particular points in Parliament. And then there's the other side of it, doesn't it, where they're literally just thugs and hooligans jumping on the bandwagon who don't partake in any of the electoral process or democratic process. And I think if you're not willing to engage with it at all, it's very difficult for you to show some legitimate means of attempting to get your point heard, whether valid or not. And I think we generally, as a society, and it's very difficult for people to do so, but it will stop us. Hopefully it stops us from becoming too polarized. But we absolutely need to hear views that are going to be thrown out. And it's one of the things that people are very scared of, having certain topics brought up at Parliament, and then, but I think they should be them discussed through both houses, hopefully 2 elected houses, and judged on their merits. So it has to be people, on either side making the point for whatever it happens to be. And we don't listen to the other side, whatever that may be, on whatever issue it is, often enough, I feel. And we risk becoming really tribalised. And there are some very distinct tribalizations, one of which we are seeing playing out at the minute. And when that happens, it delegitimizes your what you're asking for, or what you think you're asking for, I suppose. In the same way that I did back then with the BLM riots, I think the same now. Any concerns that you have over a specific race or policy, I guess that's the same for the BLM ones as well, right? Like, it's delegitimized by the fact that you're willing to burn down shops, burn down hotels, attack places of worship, destroy public-owned property, like statues and that kind of thing, previously. And at that point, that's when, in my opinion, if we're going to do like a blackout on it, effectively, say, right, that point shouldn't be debated or shouldn't be looked at. It should happen on the aftermath of people taking those kind of actions. Because you can't have your cake and eat it, or you shouldn't be able to have your cake and eat it, basically. As in, be able to protest in such a violent way and then also expect your views to be heard. So I'm not saying I necessarily agree with the government stance at the minute, Keir Starmer's stance.
of being very. Actually, no, I am. I'm actually calling for more, aren't I? So yes, maybe I do agree with Keir mostly, Labour mostly on this particular issue, and it needs to be put down. There needs to be greater security. As I say, if you have to, as mad as it sounds to say, if the police are needed to reinforce, if the army needed to reinforce the police, it should happen and should have happened last time as well. Because the longer you let something like this carry on, the more chance it has of becoming a normality. And that's the one thing I'm very glad didn't happen last time, and I absolutely pray that it does not happen this time as well, because the UK, was a much less safe and cooperative place. Because I've lived in how the UK functions normally, and yeah, a lot of stuff isn't great. And I'm not even going to talk about the concerns or what would be the logical concerns of what's being rioted about, because of the points I've just made. If you're going to do that kind of wanton destruction, you don't deserve to have it spoken about. Or not for those people anyway. We can talk about it after the fact, and actually have an adult conversation about what is or isn't going on. So, yeah, I don't know. It took me a very long time to get to the point that, yeah, you can't. I'm going to end it the same way I wanted to start it, but I was tripping over my words a little bit. Is you can't love your country if you're going to laugh when it burns. And I think that'll do. So apologies, it's become a bit of a downer, but like I say, it's something I'm very passionate about. I hate to see kind of public disorder on this level. You would like to think that we are more mature in our democracy than this. And I'm not using the representation thing as an excuse. Separately, I do think there needs to be electoral reform. However, this sort of thing, once again, doesn't necessarily help that argument if you are going to go to those extreme levels to get what you want, effectively, what you think you want. Happy to hear thoughts in the comments below, and yeah, I guess just a very, very sad period of time at the minute. I'm going to go and feed this cat because I think she's hungry. Okay, bye for now.